So John the Baptist's daddy was Zechariah. Now Zechariah, kind of like Abraham, if you know the story, was an old man and he didn't have any kids. And he had prayed when he was a young man to try to have kids. You know, in the Jewish culture, especially in those days, it was very important to have children. If you didn't have children, there was something considered to be wrong with you. God didn't like you. You were an evil
The
person.
fuck?
Stuff like that, right? Is why they would what they would think.
I
So
guess
his
I'm a bad person to choose now. Alright, cool. For not wanting kids.
yeah,
The fuck?
it's all right. So anyway, so he's lived with that his whole life, right? So he's in the temple now. He's an old man, and he's in the temple. He's a priest, and he's doing the service, doing incense and stuff. And an angel comes to him and says, "Zechariah, your prayer has been answered. You're going to have a son." And so he doesn't even believe that this can happen. He's done past the age of having kids. His wife done been through menopause, right? So he don't believe him. And so the angel says, "Because you don't believe me, you won't be able to talk until this child's born, because this is going to happen, and he's going to be a prophet, and he's going to go before Jesus, the Messiah, and all that stuff." And so the point I'm making is this: is that Zechariah, as a young man, just like us, he prayed, "Lord, we're not having no kids. Please give us a kid. Please give us a kid." And God doesn't. And decades go by, and he done gave up on that. That ain't gonna happen. So he quit even believing it can happen, especially since he's past the age of having kids. So much that when an angel comes to him and says, "Hey man, God heard your prayer. You're going to have a kid," that he don't even believe it, right? And so sometimes it's like that. Sometimes we pray and we ask for things, and then God doesn't do it because His plan is something different, And maybe we're going to get our answer, or maybe we ain't, or maybe it's going to be something different, and we don't realize it. And so we move on, and we forget about it, or we don't believe it anymore, and then God may do something in the future and we don't even make a connection. We don't even know. So that's one thing, we don't see it. But another thing in that story is that he prayed. This was a good man, and he prayed for a kid, and maybe 50 years went by and that prayer did not get answered. And we don't know why God does those things. God never tells us and explains to us very much why he does things. That question is not answered by God too much, because God's attitude is like this: I'm God. You can't understand why I do things. I'm too smart. I'm too high for you. So just trust me. I've already shown you that I love you. I sent my son. I showed you this. I gave you my word. I do all these things. So just trust me that if you're my child, I got you, and it's all going to work out in the end, because he promises that that's the truth, right? And so he doesn't answer us why things happen too much. And instead he says, just trust me, just trust me. And over you can find stories in the Bible where bad things are happening and people are crying about it just like we do today. And God's not answering why it's happening. And instead he may not say anything. Or if he does, he just says, trust me, I'm with you. And those things are kind of hard for us. And it makes a lot of people turn away. But that's just part of the process. You got to come to God the right way, the way he says, and you got to accept God for who he is. And a lot of people don't want to do that. They're rebellious. They're like, I want my way, and you're going to be the God that I want you to be, or I'm not going to serve you. That person doesn't know God and doesn't love God. He just wants a God to be like a genie and do what he wants. But that ain't how God works. We serve
Mm-hmm.
God. God don't serve us. You know what I'm saying? Now, if we do serve God, of course, God is with us. We're blessed in so many ways, but sometimes we go through stuff. All the disciples were killed, tortured, killed. And so bad things still happen to good people, but there's always a reason and a purpose behind it, and we also have the other
Like
side.
to learn about it, or
Huh?
like to learn from it what happened or stuff like that.
Yeah, there's
Some bad
always
stuff
something to
happened.
learn, but sometimes we might not learn. Sometimes other people will learn from what, like we read the stories in the Bible and we understand, but the people who lived through it didn't understand. That's a lot of the time. They went to their grave and they never understood. Yet we read their story, and we've got more experience. We've been around another 1,000 years, 2,000 years since this was finished. And so we have a lot more understanding, and we look at it and we understand. But they didn't. And sometimes you don't get the answer, but the answer was for somebody else, not for you. God just let your circumstances help them, you know. And God works all those things out. And the part that's hard for us is that we don't see a lot of the answers now, but we trust and we know that on the other side we're probably going to understand a whole lot more. But not only that, God's going to wipe away all tears. There'll be no more sickness, no deformities, no anything that's bad in this life. All the stuff in this life that's bad is because sin entered into the world like a disease, and it corrupted everything. So that's why randomly it seems, this person's born without an arm, and this person's born, it's because sin corrupted our DNA. It corrupted all the DNA of all the plants, the fish, everything in the world. It corrupted the earth itself. It corrupted the sky, because all those things were given to Adam's dominion. He was ruler over all them things. And when he sinned, that sin is death. It's corruption. And that corruption entered into everything in the universe. And Romans 8 tells us that, and tells us that when we're changed to be like Jesus, that all that corruption in the universe will be gone too, right? So God's going to set it all right. Sometimes we get a lot of that in this life. Some people, sometimes we don't, but we don't know why, other than we have to trust that it's for good. You know what I mean?
Like, might be off topic, might not, but like, I saw that one video you reposted, like about the woman in the car asking like God to bring her a Bible or something like that, and
Yeah.
I think it was later that they like two girls preached something about Jesus and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then one gifted her a Bible.
Right.
Like,
and it was her personal Bible too. Yeah. But that don't always happen. But it does happen, and it might happen to the person that might not make it any other way. You know what I mean? Maybe that woman would have not got saved and come to the Lord, or committed suicide, or just anything if that didn't happen. Whereas the next person is going to make it through and doesn't need that. We don't know exactly how that stuff works. We can theorize like what I just did. But what we have to know is what God says, that He is good. And there's no evil in Him at all. And there's no shadow of turning. In other words, He doesn't change. He's always been the same. He'll always be the same. He's not like us. We learn from our mistakes and we change. We should believe something different. I used to be a bad person. Now I'm a good person. We change. God doesn't have to change. He's already perfect in every way. He knows everything. He's got all the power. He can do whatever He wants. And He chose to give us a free will to act and do things that are not His will. It's not His will that babies get aborted or that diseases in the world. That's not His will, and He's going to get rid of all that in time, right? But He gave us, His will was more important to Him than making those things not happen, was to give us a free choice to do what we want. That's why we have war. That's why we have murder. That's why we have all these things, because we do these things. And the devil, of course, influences us, but the power is still with us. God doesn't let the devil use us like a puppet. He just influences the evil side that we have and helps us do those things. But God's going to set all that right. And so the whole history of man, let's say it was 6,000 years, 7,000 years, because there's going to be a 1,000-year reign of Jesus, is nothing in eternity when there's going to be none of these things. It's not even a single minute compared to eternity. But we live in this now, and so it's, it's like everything, but it's really so small. We just can't see that.
Like, quick question to the abortion stuff. Like, also from my post from Reddit, like, who would get sterilized in the future because, like, like no kids, no, I'm good. Like in theory, in your opinion or God's opinion, I don't know. Like, from my perspective, I think it would be much better to get sterilized because it wouldn't like directly kill someone instead of abortion. Like, you know what I mean?
Right. And that would be better, but it's an individual basis. You can't make like a rule and say this is the way it's going to be for everybody. It would be better for everybody, because for somebody else, God might say, no, I want this child. They might be born messed up now, and they might only live 4 years, but they're going to be in heaven forever. And so I didn't want that child to be diseased. I didn't want that child to die at 4 years old, but I wanted that child. And so I let all that happen. It's the consequences of sin and all this stuff that made the child messed up, but the child is not really messed up but for a moment. And forever, ever, that child is not going to be messed up anymore. They're going to be perfect and they're good. And so there's that side of it that we can't see. And so you can't make a rule and say that it should be this way for everybody. But in an individual's case, it may be that God agrees with that person, says, yes, don't have children. Don't pass it on. You don't need to.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And so there's these kind of things, and there's an example of that even in the Bible in the bad way. There was a king named Hezekiah, and he was a good man. And so the prophet came to him and told him, "Hey, you're going to die. You're not going to recover from this illness that you have. So set your house in order and get it all set up so your sons can take over because you're going to die." So the prophet Isaiah, who told him this, he's leaving. And so this guy prays to God and he cries. And God tells Isaiah, "Go back and tell him I give him 15 more years because he's been good and he asked me and he's crying and stuff," right? So Isaiah goes back and tells him God gives him 15 years. But you know what happens? He has another son in that 15 years named Manasseh. And he was the most wicked man to ever be king. And he caused the destruction of their whole kingdom. And it was all the people died, but that would not have happened if Hezekiah had just died. You see? So God sees things like that, but God was willing to let that go down for whatever reason. He doesn't tell us why. But from that example, we can see the difference that God said, "It's time for you to die, you should come home." But God let the man choose to stay. And when he stayed, all this bad came as a result. It wasn't his fault, but it happened as a result that he lived the extra 15 years and was able to have another kid. You see? And so God sees all those things and he works all those things out. And we can't understand them. We can't see them, but in hindsight sometimes. And so for some person it might be better to be sterilized, like Hezekiah dying. You know, he wouldn't have had that bad son. And because the children that they have may end up in hell or something, right? But they may have a child that's going to be in heaven, and we wouldn't want to lose that. And so in that case, it wouldn't be good, right? So that's all I'm saying is that for every situation, it's going to be different with moral choices like that, ones that aren't strictly forbidden in the Bible. So that's just the situation there, you know. And so you have to, when you pray and you read the Bible and you grow and you get closer to God, God guides you in your heart like you felt like you should pray for that woman. That's probably God guiding you to do that. Okay? And it may not even be for the woman. It may be just so that you'll pray, you know, or it may be for the woman. And so God does that, and that's how He'll guide us in those kind of decisions. We may not know it. We may not realize that God is the one telling me, "Hey, don't have kids." Or we may not know it that God is the one telling us, "Hey, have kids and I don't want to and I'm going through this struggle." You know what I'm saying? And so it works out mysteriously like that. But the closer you get to God, the more clear His voice becomes compared to your own thoughts, your own wants, and your own desires. And then we also have the Bible that gives us a guide if it's like something that's easy to understand whether it's right or wrong. Like I'm married, but I like this other girl, me and my wife ain't getting along. I think it would be God's will for us to go, but it's not because the Bible says God hates divorce. You know what I'm saying? So it's not
Mm.
God's will for me to divorce this woman and go to this other one because suddenly we like each other and now me and my wife don't. Right? So that one's clear. It's in the Bible. But when it's not clear and in the Bible, it's that compass on the inside that God guides us to what is right and wrong.
Mm. Also, like, again, about like abortions, like, okay, but also like talking the background of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like like Charlie Kirk. Like I usually like his takes, except like abortion and stuff like that, because like in one argument with a girl, I don't know like in what setting it was, but like she asked about abortion, like if he would force his daughter to like have kids when she would get raped,
Right.
like at a really young age, like 10 or 9, because for example I got my period at 9, means it could have got me pregnant at 9, like really ill.
Mm-hmm.
Like if she would have got pregnant at that age, like if he would force her to like have the baby and stuff like that. I really need to get to the point by that.
Right. Well,
And like he said he would, like, and I thought that was pretty messed.
well,
Like, what do you think
God,
about that?
it would be wrong to terminate the child because the child is a person. That's murder, any way you look at it. The circumstances the child was conceived in was wrong, but that doesn't justify, like somebody killed my whole family and then I hunt them down and kill them back. That might be what they deserve, but it's wrong for me to do that. Two wrongs don't make a right. And so just think of this. a child was killed, and there's a whole lot of raped children that are born, and they get grown, and most of them are glad that they were born. And so stopping their life before it even started is not even right. And true enough, it's trauma for the woman, especially this little child that got raped and made pregnant and had to have a kid. But she can get over that. She can heal. What people don't count is that most of these arguments coming from that side, they're not from people that are Christians, and they're not godly people. Because godly people understand that even that young girl, let's say she was just really wrecked behind this, and then having to carry this child and then have a child, she's really wrecked. God can heal that. God can turn every bit of that into something good for her and for the child that she has. God's able to do that, but we don't believe that when we don't believe in God or the Bible or whatever. And so looking at it from that view, yeah, you can justify, well, that child should be killed. You know what I mean? But if you believe in God and stuff, there's never a justification for murder, ever. The only time that God permits life to be taken is when I take someone else's life, the government can take my life. You know? And so that's the only way. That child in the womb has never killed anyone. And so it's not justified in the Bible at all. And it's a person, you know. And yeah, it's bad circumstances created by that woman conceiving from rape. But that doesn't justify anything beyond that to do something against that, you know. And it's sad that this stuff happens, but one day it won't happen anymore. You know, one day all that kind of stuff will be burned up in a lake of fire, and all that'll be left is the good stuff. And but until that time comes, we got to deal with the things that happen, with the cards that come to us in life. You know, some people are born, you know, with one arm, like I said, or whatever. And some people get in a car wreck and get paralyzed, and just things happen, and these are the things that we have to deal with in this life. But part of the thing that we leave out of all that, there's only so much that we have to deal with, no matter how extreme our circumstances are. Let's say you got two people. One of them goes through just little things in life, and the other one has the most major problems you've ever seen. Well, when you get down to the core of what's going on in their hearts, it's almost the same, because this person went through little, God gave him little help. This person went through a lot, so God gives them a lot of help. Now, they feel more intense emotions. They have more pain. They have more this and that, but how they got up each day and continued on. And I know this from my own personal experience, and God revealed it to me when I was like 40-something. But how they got up each day was God was the one who told them, get up, you can do it, go on, I'll give you strength, even though they didn't even know it. And so they get to the end of their life, but both of them got to the end of their life by God's grace and God's help. But this one here got a lot more character, got a lot more strength, got a lot more wisdom, got a lot more of all these kind of things. Even if they went through hatred and bitterness and all this in the beginning because of what happened to them. This ain't fair. Why did this happen to me? You know, in the end, they're better. And then when they go into eternity, all those things that they grew are now, the Bible makes it like gems and crowns and all that. But what it really is, they're that much bigger of a person for all eternity in all good ways. Every bad thing strengthened them with some kind of either love or compassion or some kind of strength that they had to use in spite of what was happening to them, that God is creating in them through the circumstance. He didn't cause the circumstance, sin and all that did, but He's fixing the circumstance in them secretly, building this stuff in them so that when they pass on to the other side, these things are there forever. But all the bad stuff is gone. And that's what He's doing with every person on earth. So when we understand that, we realize whether the person is going through a lot or whether a person is going through a little. Instead of sitting back and go, why don't, all this stuff happened to me, why don't stuff happen to her? She's a bad person, Instead of seeing it like that, we realize that all these things are eternal from God's perspective, and He's working these things out, and He's giving the person that needs a little bit of grace, a little bit of grace. And the person that needs a lot, He's giving them a lot. But from the outside, you can't see nothing but their circumstances. They had it easy. They had it hard. That's not fair. You see? And so that's what the Bible teaches us. It teaches us this unseen part that's going on. But it doesn't reveal everything. Like it doesn't tell us why. We'll understand a lot more of that to the other side. The Bible says right now, we see like through a dark mirror, the black mirrors like they used to have in the old days. It says we see through a dark mirror. We don't see clear. But when that day comes, it says we'll see face to face, no filter. Okay? So right now we're seeing through a filter. And this is the only thing that can tell us what's on the other side of that, because ain't none of us been there but God. And so this is what teaches us these things. But our understanding is limited, and so we have arguments of what this passage might mean, or this passage, because this person says, well, if you do this, this will happen to you. And this person says, no, this will happen. Because we're all reading this through that filter of our own life. But the closer we get to God, the less and less of that there is.